All right, Jesse on fire. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so let's talk about Dustin Poirier again, and Tony Ferguson, and Dan Hooker, and Dana White, and this whole entire situation. All right, so before I get into it, though, if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell, because I have a feeling that this is like, I was kind of struggling today. I was like, it's hard to follow up a video about Conor, talking about suicide on Twitter. I don't know, what's today going to be like? And I was like, looking on MMA fighting, and I saw this whole thing, and I was like, what's the story here? Oh, this is actually a really interesting video. I have an interesting video to do here. So if you agree, maybe you could subscribe, right? Maybe you could subscribe. And by the way, so people who say in the comments, I subscribed, after you begged for it. Okay, let me just school you guys to what's going on, okay? So if you have a plan, right, if you're actually chasing a goal like I am, which is to build an incredibly successful YouTube career, then a good place to start is you look at someone who is doing what you are after and then copy some of their best practices. And so as an example, every single person who I see who is really crushing it on YouTube does that. Well, maybe not every single one, but the ones that I'm specifically, mimicking, which I'm not going to say because I don't want you guys to think about my politics, but they all do it. So that's what it is. All right. So here's the deal. So Dustin Poirier turns down the Tony Ferguson fight. Dana White says Dustin didn't want the fight, and Tony Ferguson has been offered a new fight, which I imagine is probably Dan Hooker. And there is actually a lot to unpack there. All right. Now it seems like that's a relatively simple thing, but it's not. Okay, it's not. There's a lot of stuff underneath there that we can talk about, because this sets up the absolute best case scenario. Like, it really does. I mean, the absolute best case scenario, because first of all, let's think through what is the best case scenario in any of these situations, right? What's the best case scenario? The most big fights possible, like the most really big matchups possible. And what makes a big matchup? What makes a big matchup? Big names fighting against each other, and big names who are coming off victories fighting each other. And what happens when two big names fight against each other? One of them loses, right? One of them is going to lose. And I think that this situation with Conor, okay, which I failed to bring up at the beginning, Conor's in the 155-pound division, okay? Conor's in the 155-pound division. Justin Gaethje, Khabib, Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, right? That's a big group of studs where any of them that fight each other is a huge, huge fight. Now, right now, Tony is coming off a loss, okay? So he has this kind of I don't know, he's coming off a loss, and he got his ass kicked, right? Well, guess what? If he fights Dustin Poirier, one of them has to lose. Now, I realize that, this is not really going to make a whole lot of sense, since obviously what I'm about to say is that if Tony fights Dan Hooker and then he wins, that puts him right back up in the mix where he could potentially fight Khabib, he could potentially fight Conor, he could potentially fight, but he's kind of right there right now. But nonetheless, that's the narrative that we're going to tell, all right? So here's the deal. Dan Hooker, I would say almost for sure, is the person that got offered the fight. And let's talk about that. How insane is that fight going to be? Because if Dustin Poirier didn't demonstrate that Dan Hooker is going to take a 5-round banger and it's going to be a barn burner, then I don't know what does. And also, Dan Hooker is a little bit, not quite as crisp as Dustin Poirier. So him against Tony Ferguson, two zombies walking in, it was going to be amazing, right? That's an amazing fight. So if they book Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson, I will go back to the video that I did where I said, Tony Ferguson against Dustin Poirier might be the best fight of all time. And I will say, I don't see a tremendous difference in terms of the quality of the fight between Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson. That'll be a bananas fight. A bananas fight. Except that if Dan Hooker wins, it doesn't put him directly into the mix. It really just knocks Tony completely out of the mix. So obviously that fight is a little bit scary, but I think Tony will win. So, I mean, I think Tony will win that fight, but I think it'll be a monstrous fight. It'll be amazing, right? So, and also, if Tony Ferguson decisively beats Dan Hooker, really whips his ass, like he might, because his hands are made of razor blades and death, that kind of really reinvigorates the boogeyman, El Kukui, where it's listen, man, if anybody who gets their ass kicked, it takes a little bit of shine off of him and makes him a little less scary. If he goes out there and he batters Dan Hooker, a guy who can take a beating and keep on coming, to where Tony Ferguson can really show you what this guy can do when he's landing and he was never going to run out of gas no matter what. Oh man, he could put a murderous beating on somebody, and Dan Hooker might be a perfect recipient of that beating. But again, you know, you never know, because Tony Ferguson, like I said, like I've said a million times on this channel, he took so much damage in that fight against Gaethje. You don't know who's coming back. But yeah, so assuming Tony wins, now you've got this. I mean, will there ever have been a group at the top of a division that's more interesting than that? Like, imagine if Justin Gaethje wins, right? Imagine if Justin Gaethje wins, and then look at the lay of the land. Now, I will say again, I personally think that if Justin Gaethje wins, he's going to want Dustin Poirier, because he lost to Dustin Poirier, right? And he hates Conor. He hates Conor so much that he might not give him that fight, right? I mean, like, it sounds crazy. He hates Conor. Well, of course, fight him and beat him up and get the payday. I think he hates him enough that he might not give him the fight, honestly. Now, especially given that he has the opportunity to take one back from one of the guys that beat him. I will say this. Look, I have a lot of respect for Justin Gaethje. If he wins and then he doesn't fight Conor, if Conor wants that fight, you will never hear me root for Justin Gaethje ever again. And I'm not saying that that will infuriate me on a level that I just can't even. It'll make me hate Ali Abdelaziz too, honestly. Like, you can't just like lock a guy out because you don't like him. That's bullshit. As a matter of fact, that is. Wait. Ali Abdelaziz is not going to counsel that, because he knows that he's going to make a fortune if Justin Gaethje fights Conor. So I would imagine, you know what? I mean, Justin Gaethje might have the idea to not fight Conor, but he doesn't strike me as a stand my ground no matter what guy, unless he really means it, which he might with Conor. But everyone around him is going to be like, dude, you got to fight Conor, man. You have to fight Conor. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, anything can happen. But I mean, if Tony Ferguson wins, you know what that could really set up? A fight against Khabib. No matter what. If Khabib loses or Khabib wins, maybe we finally get to see the Tony Ferguson fight. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is this, okay? So Dana White said, we offered the fight to Dustin. Dustin didn't want the fight, okay? Now raise your hand if you believe that Dustin Poirier didn't want to fight Tony Ferguson, okay? This is me pretending to, like, you know, I'm like raising my hand, but I'm not really, like, you know, pretend, right? Now leave your hand up if you're an utter moron, okay? Because if you believe that Dustin Poirier didn't want the Tony Ferguson fight, you are an imbecile, all right? I was thinking about this, like, you know how it is. Like I've done this a billion times. I haven't done this in a while, though. Dana White, if you ever, I will literally come work in any capacity in the UFC, because I am that certain that inside of 2 years, I will be in an executive position in your company, because I was born to do it, okay? Anyway, we can talk about my resume another time, but that's a conversation we should have. I have more respect for Dana White as an entrepreneur and as a man and as a business person than any other business person in America. Period. Point blank. Period. I cannot stress that enough. There's no one I would rather have as a mentor. But that said, I am going to bring this up because, you know, just because I want the guy as a mentor doesn't mean that I'm going to be a chicken shit and not call things out that I see, which is this. I don't understand the strategy of the, you know, saying in the press conferences, things like that. Like, it could just be that he's kind of pissed off that he didn't get, that Dustin didn't sign, which I totally understand. Honestly, if that's what he said, if he was like, I don't know, pissed me off that he didn't sign the fight, so I said he doesn't want the fight, and I kind of, you know, was just digging at him a little bit, I'd be like, oh, okay. You know, if it's as simple as that, it's simple as that, right? But if it's some kind of strategy, I don't really understand it, because I don't know, like, everybody knows what's going on. Dustin wants more money, right? Like, Dustin Poirier is a big name now. He really is. Like, he is a needle mover. Not a Nate Diaz needle mover, not a Masvidal needle mover, but a needle mover. I mean, worth more money than he's probably been offered. I mean, you know. I mean, again, I talked about this before, but when it comes to the Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier fight, if that's on the Khabib and Gaethje fight, that's not going to drive any more pay-per-views. It's just not. So it's not a good investment. There's no ROI there. None. ROI is return on investment. Okay. There's no ROI in giving Dustin Poirier a lot more money to fight Tony Ferguson on that card, because you're not going to sell more pay-per-views. Every single event is its own entity. It's its own business. Okay. Like, it just is, right? Like, it sometimes, oh, if we put this guy on this particular card, we should pay him more to get it on this card, because you're thinking forward, where we can build this guy's We can build this guy's persona. Like as an example, when Conor was fighting Khabib and they tried to put Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz on that card, and Nate Diaz lost his mind. And I said that, I was like, what is he, is Nate Diaz an imbecile? Like, this is the ultimate, like, all the Conor eyes are going to be on this event, which a lot of people are your fans now. Go out there and beat Dustin Poirier, and you'll be a superstar, and it'll hype the next fight between you and whoever. Like, that seemed like a no-brainer to me. Now, I misread that because it turns out Nate Diaz was correct, and he's already a superstar. I didn't realize it then. I didn't realize it. But you know, that's what they were trying to do, right? So in some cases, putting a guy on a specific card is, you're not going to make ROI on that particular event, but it's about the investment on the next time he fights, building his persona so the next time he fights, you sell a bunch more pay-per-views. But in this case, win, lose, or draw, you're not going to gain or lose a bunch of, you know, steam on either Ferguson or Dustin Poirier, regardless of which way that fight goes. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows who he is. Because a Gaethje and Khabib fight is still kind of a hardcore fight. Not like it's not a Masvidal, it's not a Conor McGregor, it's not an Nate Diaz fight, right? It's like, actually I take that back. What am I talking about? It's a Khabib fight. What am I talking about? I just think the sport is mainstream enough that Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson are known entities, okay? You're not going to build their persona by putting them on that card, so the ROI isn't there. Dan Hooker versus Tony Ferguson is probably of equal value on that card to the company. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't understand why, unless, again, it's just Dana being like, fuck you, Dustin, you should have taken the card. You should have taken the fight, which I totally understand. But anyway, that's what I got. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. Peace.